13th,
Move! We have to get through!
The
He's
east
bleeding
room
bad,
of the
we need to
White House
stop!
gleamed
No
with
time!
television
Push through the
lights
gap ahead!
and the weight of history too long delayed.
Keep moving, don't stop!
Marcus Stone
Clear.
stood at attention
How are
in
you
a dark
feeling,
suit
soldier?
that hung slightly loose
you
on a
tell me what happened?
77-year-old frame.
It's been rough, sir. Got
His
hit during
hands
the last
trembled.
push.
Not from age, though age had bent his back and silvered his hair and carved deep lines around eyes that had seen
The enemy
too
is
much.
advancing from the east.
The
We
trembling
must hold this
came from
ridge.
something
Understood,
else.
sir. What are your orders?
From the weight
Deploy
of what was
reserves
about
here.
to happen. From the knowledge that this moment should have occurred 52 years earlier, when his hands were steady and his back was straight, and the men who deserved to stand beside him were still breathing. President Clinton approached with the Medal of Honor cradled in both hands. The medal caught the light. Blue ribbon, gold
This old
star.
photo takes me
The
back.
inscription that read
The church,
simply,
the trees,
"For
and
valor."
us children.
Marcus felt
We had
the
such
ribbon
innocent
settle around
times
his
back
neck.
then.
Felt the
Time
metal's
goes by
weight
so
against his
fast.
chest. 5 ounces of metal and cloth that had taken 52 years to travel from a hillside in Italy to this room in Washington. 52 years.
This can't be right.
19,345 days. More than half a century. Longer than many soldiers lived. Beside Marcus stood 6 empty chairs. Each held a folded American flag. 6 men who had earned this same medal. 6 men who had died waiting. 6 families receiving recognition for fathers and husbands and sons who never knew their valor had been officially acknowledged. Marcus Stone was the only recipient still breathing. The only one who lived long enough to hear 2 words that should have been spoken in 1945. Thank you. But standing in that room with cameras flashing and dignitaries applauding, Marcus wasn't thinking about the metal warming against his chest. He was thinking about a question whispered 52 years earlier on a dark hillside in Italy. A question he couldn't hear over the sound of gunfire and dying. A question that had haunted him through every day of those 52 years. Private Isaiah Grant, age 21, had died in Marcus's arms at 01:15 hours on April 6, 1945. Died with a rifle round through his lung on a hillside outside Castle Aganalfi in northern Italy. Isaiah had grabbed Marcus's jacket with a bloody hand, had pulled Marcus close, had whispered something with his last breath. Marcus had leaned in, had pressed his ear inches from Isaiah's lips, had strained to hear over the chaos of battle. The words were lost, drowned by the staccato bark of German machine guns, swallowed by the concussion of mortar rounds walking across the hillside, buried beneath the shouts of dying men and the whistle of bullets and the ringing in Marcus's ears from too many explosions, too close. Isaiah's mouth had moved. His lips had formed words. His eyes had held Marcus's gaze with desperate intensity. Then the light went out. The hand fell away. The question, whatever it was, died with him. For 52 years, Marcus had wondered, what did Isaiah want to say? What final message did a 21-year-old black man who had witnessed a lynching at age 12 want to leave? What question could be so important that a dying soldier used his last breath to ask it? The not knowing had carved a hole in Marcus that 52 years and a Medal of Honor couldn't fill. But he would learn the answer. In 2009, 13 years after this ceremony, and 1 year before his own death, Isaiah's elderly sister would ask Marcus to tell the truth. And Marcus, age 89 and running out of time himself, would finally speak the words he'd heard on that hillside, would finally share the question that had haunted him for 64 years. But that revelation was still 12 years away. Standing in the White House in 1997, Marcus only knew that the question existed, that it waited, that someday, somehow he would have to answer it. There was another ghost in that room, another promise that had taken 52 years to keep. Corporal Benjamin Carter had shown Marcus a photograph before the mission. Every mission, ritual and prayer and promise, all wrapped together. The photograph was creased from handling, faded from sun, precious beyond measure. It showed Benjamin's wife Eleanor and their 2 children, Rebecca, age 4, James, age 2, beautiful black family in Sunday clothes posed in front of White Clapper Church in Valdosta, Georgia. Benjamin's words were always the same. When I die, Lieutenant, you make sure my kids know I died trying to make their lives better. You promised me that. Marcus had promised 16 times before April 5th, 1945. Each promise felt heavier than the last. Each time Benjamin showed him that photograph, Marcus wondered if this would be the mission where he'd have to make good on the oath. April 5th was the 17th time, the last time. Benjamin Carter died at 01:45 hours with a shattered femur and a promise hanging in the air between them. died 6 months before discharge, 6 months before returning to Georgia in his 3 acres of scrub land and his wife and his children who would grow up not remembering their father's face. "Tell Eleanor I fought for them," Benjamin had said with his last breath. For Rebecca and James, tell them it mattered. Marcus had promised, had sworn he would tell Benjamin's children exactly what their father died for. Had no idea he would have to wait 52 years before America would listen, before anyone cared that a black corporal from Georgia had died, hoping his children might inherit a better country than the one that sent him to war. Now standing in the White House with a Medal of Honor around his neck, Marcus had finally kept that promise. Benjamin's daughter, Rebecca, sat in the audience. 74 years old now, had been 4 when her father deployed to Italy, had no memory of his face except from photographs, had grown up knowing her father died in the war but not knowing the full story, not knowing about the impossible mission. The 3 machine gun nests destroyed, the 26 Germans killed, the intelligence captured, the heroism that should have been recognized in 1945 but was instead buried under 52 years of institutional racism. Marcus had told her, had called Rebecca Carter 3 months earlier when the Army notified him about the Medal of Honor ceremony, had explained everything. The mission, the castle, her father's bravery, his final words. The promise Marcus had kept for 52 years, calling her family every April 5th to say, "Your father mattered. He was the bravest man I ever knew." Rebecca had cried on the phone, had thanked Marcus for remembering, for keeping the promise, for making sure her father's sacrifice wasn't forgotten. But she had also asked a question that Marcus couldn't answer, a question that cut to the bone. Why did it take so long? If my father earned this medal, why did you have to wait 52 years? The answer involved another man in that room, not physically present, but haunting the ceremony nonetheless. Colonel Richard Ashford, career officer, white man in his mid-40s in April 1945. The man who had given Marcus the orders for the Castle Agenalfi mission. The man who had stood smoking a cigar as Marcus and his squad departed into darkness. The man who had smiled. Not an encouraging smile, not a confident smile, a satisfied smile. The kind of smile a man makes when a problem is about to solve itself, when something messy will soon become clean, when expendable people are about to stop being a concern. Marcus had seen that smile as he led his 7 men toward the German lines, had glanced back one last time before entering the kill zone, had seen Colonel Ashford standing at the edge of American positions, cigar-glowing face illuminated by distant explosions, smiling, like a man who had just disposed of garbage he no longer needed to think about. In that moment, Marcus had understood. The mission wasn't just impossible, it was intended to be. 7 black soldiers sent to die so no white officers would have to. 7 men whose deaths would be convenient, whose failure could be blamed on supposed incompetence rather than impossible odds, whose success, if by some miracle it occurred, could be credited to white leadership rather than black courage. But Marcus didn't know the worst part yet, didn't know that the mission would become unnecessary at midnight, that new orders would come through at 0000 hours on April 6th, directing the division to bypass Castle Agenalfi entirely, that Isaiah Grant would die at 01:15, 75 minutes after the mission became optional, that Benjamin Carter would die at 01:45, 105 minutes after the orders changed. Nobody had told them. Nobody had recalled them. Let them continue fighting and dying because recalling a black squad wasn't worth the radio call. Because 8 black soldiers were expendable enough that it didn't matter if they completed a mission that no longer served any strategic purpose. Colonel Ashford would visit Marcus in the medical tent at 0900 hours, would congratulate him on the successful mission, would mention almost casually that new orders had come through around midnight, would reveal that the castle had been deemed unnecessary after all, would explain it as operational confusion, radio communications difficulty, the fog of war. Marcus would understand it as something else, as deliberate abandonment, as racism so casual and so deeply embedded that letting black soldiers die unnecessarily didn't even register as a moral question. Just operational convenience, just the cost of doing business in an army that valued white lives more than black ones. But that revelation was still hours away. Standing in the White House in 1997, Marcus only knew what he had known on that hillside in Italy, that the system was designed to fail him. That recognition would be denied, that promises would be broken, that he and his men were expendable. What Marcus didn't know in 1997 and wouldn't learn until 1992, when a researcher at Shaw University began investigating Medal of Honor awards, was just how systematic the denial had been. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States military had awarded more than 400 Medals of Honor. Not one went to a black soldier. Zero. Despite over 1 million black Americans serving in uniform, despite documented acts of exceptional valor, despite recommendations submitted and approved at every level below the War Department, 7 black soldiers had been recommended for the Medal of Honor during World War II. 7 had their recommendations downgraded based on race rather than merit. Marcus Stone was one of the 7, the only one who lived long enough to see the error corrected. The other 6 received their medals posthumously in this same ceremony, their families accepting recognition that came decades too late. If you want to understand how 7 black soldiers accomplished what 3 white officers could not, and why America made them wait 52 years for recognition, then you need to understand what happened on that hillside in Italy. You need to know about Castle Agenalfi and the impossible mission and the colonel's satisfied smile. You need to hear about Isaiah's dying question and Benjamin's final promise in the moment when Marcus realized the mission had been unnecessary all along. Because this isn't just a story about one night of combat, it's a story about promises kept across half a century, about courage that transcends recognition, about men who fought for an America that didn't fight for them. So hit that like button right now, because this is a story that almost disappeared into silence, a story that the United States Army tried to bury under 52 years of bureaucracy and racism and convenient forgetfulness. Subscribe because we're bringing you forgotten stories of American heroes who deserve better, who earned recognition that was denied, who kept fighting even when their own country told them they didn't matter. And stay with me, because the worst betrayal hasn't happened yet. The most devastating revelation is still coming. And when you understand what Marcus Stone and his men went through on April 5th, 1945, you'll understand why this medal took 52 years to arrive. 52 years earlier. April 5th, 1945, northern Italy, 15 miles from the Gothic Line. First Lieutenant Marcus Stone, age 25, stood in a muddy command tent receiving orders that would kill most of his men. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, but water still dripped from the canvas roof. Mud sucked at his boots. The air smelled of wet earth and cordite, and coffee gone cold in tin cups. Colonel Richard Ashford stood on the other side of a wooden field table covered with maps. White career officer, mid-40s, the kind of man who wore his uniform like he'd been born in it, the kind of officer who believed in the chain of command and proper procedure and the natural order of things, which in April 1945 meant white officers led and black soldiers followed, and the system worked exactly as designed. Ashford pointed to the map. Castle Agenalfi, medieval fortress on a hill above the village of Stratoia. German position, heavily fortified, the kind of target that swallowed soldiers and spit out casualty reports. You'll lead a reinforced squad, Ashford said. 7 men, night infiltration, eliminate the forward observation posts. Destroy the machine gun nest covering the main approach. Clear a path for the dawn assault. Marcus looked at the map, studied the topography. The castle sat atop a hill with clear fields of fire in every direction. 3 companies of Wehrmacht infantry garrisoned inside. MG-42 machine guns commanding every approach. Minefields ringing the base. Barbed wire in concentric circles. The Germans had spent 3 months turning a 12th century fortress into a 20th century killing machine. 7 men, Marcus said. Against how many Germans? Ashford's expression didn't change. Estimates put it at 2 companies, maybe 200 men. The math didn't work. Marcus knew it. Ashford knew it. Everyone in that tent knew it. 7 Americans against 200 Germans in a fortified position was suicide. Expected casualties 100%. Expected success rate near 0. But Marcus also knew something else. 3 white officers had already tried to take Castle Agenalfi. Captain William Morrison had led 42 men in an assault on April 2nd. 38 made it back. Captain Thomas Bradford tried April 3rd. Lost 34 men before noon. Captain James Sullivan's assault on April 4th never made it past the minefield. The medics stopped counting casualties after the first hour. 80 Americans dead in 3 days. 3 failed assaults using the same tactics. Frontal assault across open ground into interlocking fields of fire. Against professional German defenders who knew every angle and every distance and had pre-registered their mortars on every piece of cover. Why did command keep sending men to die the same way? Why did they order assault after assault using tactics that had already failed 3 times? Marcus wouldn't learn the answer until 1992, when Army investigators reviewing the records would discover a classified directive, a policy stating that black units should be given the most dangerous assignments as a test of their capabilities. That casualties among black soldiers were acceptable losses in the larger experiment of determining whether African Americans could fight as effectively as white soldiers. That the 92nd Infantry Division, the Buffalo Soldiers, were being deliberately placed in situations designed to produce high casualties. But Marcus didn't know that in April 1945. He only knew that 3 white officers had failed, and now command needed someone expendable, someone they could order to attack a fortified position with minimal support and maximum expected casualties, someone whose death wouldn't create uncomfortable questions. They chose Marcus Stone, not because he was the best officer available, not because his platoon had the highest success rate in the 370th Infantry Regiment, not because he had led patrols and taken objectives and cleared German positions for 6 months with tactical skill that would have earned a white officer promotion and recognition. They chose him because he was black, because a black lieutenant dying on an impossible mission confirmed expectations rather than challenging them, because if he failed, it proved black officers couldn't handle difficult assignments. And if he somehow succeeded, white generals could take credit for wise leadership rather than acknowledging black tactical excellence. Marcus looked at Colonel Ashford, looked at the map, looked at the impossible mission. He could refuse, could cite the casualty rates, could point out that the tactics had already failed 3 times, could demand artillery support or armor or air reconnaissance, or any of the resources that would be automatically provided to a white officer leading a similar mission. But refusal would confirm every racist belief, would prove that black officers lack courage, would justify every denied promotion and every downgraded decoration and every dangerous assignment, would become evidence that black soldiers couldn't be trusted when things got difficult. Marcus Stone was 25 years old, born in Wyoming, grandson of sharecroppers, grew up in a town with 3 black families total, joined the Army in 1943 because fighting Germans seemed more honorable than fighting American racism every day. Excelled in officer training, commissioned as a lieutenant in a military that commissioned fewer than 700 black officers out of 12 million total soldiers. For 6 months, Marcus had proved himself, led patrols, completed missions, brought his men back alive. His platoon had the highest success rate in the regiment. Didn't matter. Success by black soldiers was credited to white leadership. Failure by black soldiers confirmed racist assumptions. There was no winning, just survival. Just proving over and over that you deserved a chance you should never have had to earn. So Marcus looked at the map and made a choice. Not to please Colonel Ashford, not to earn recognition he knew he would never receive, but to prove, if only to himself and 7 other men, that black soldiers could accomplish what white soldiers could not. "I'll need volunteers," Marcus said. "I don't order men into situations like this." Ashford nodded. "Of course, Lieutenant." Dismissed. Marcus saluted, turned to leave. Thought about the mission, about the castle, about the Germans, about the mathematics of 7 men against 200, about Colonel Ashford's certainty that this was an acceptable risk. Acceptable for black soldiers anyway. Expendable lives in an expendable unit. What Marcus didn't know and wouldn't discover until 0900 hours the next morning was that the mission would become unnecessary at midnight. That while he and his men were crawling through darkness toward German positions, new orders were being drafted. Orders to bypass Castle Aganalfi entirely. Orders that would render every bullet fired and every drop of blood spilled strategically meaningless. Isaiah Grant would die 75 minutes after those orders came through. Benjamin Carter would die 105 minutes later. Both men completing a mission that command had already abandoned. Both men dying for nothing except the color of their skin and the expendability it conferred. But that betrayal was 9 hours away. At 21:00 hours on April 5th, Marcus Stone only knew he had been given an impossible mission. That 7 men would volunteer because they trusted him. That most of them would probably die. That success or failure recognition would be denied. He chose the third option. Accept the mission. Accomplish the impossible. Survive to tell the story. Prove that courage had no color, even if recognition did. Marcus stepped out of the command tent into Italian twilight. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung low and gray. The air smelled of wet earth and the distant sound of artillery. American positions stretched across the hillside in organized chaos. Tents and foxholes and supply dumps. Soldiers cleaning weapons and writing letters and trying to sleep before the next mission. Marcus walked to where his platoon was bivouacked. 23 men, all black, all volunteers, all fighting a war on 2 fronts. Against the Germans ahead and against American racism behind every order and every denied promotion and every decoration downgraded because the wrong skin color wore it. Gather round, Marcus said. His men formed a circle. Faces Marcus knew, names Marcus had memorized, backgrounds Marcus had learned during 6 months of shared danger. These were the men who had crawled through German lines and assaulted machine gun nests and held impossible positions against overwhelming odds. These were the men who had proved mission after mission that black soldiers could fight it as well as any white unit in the army. These were the men whose valor would be systematically denied recognition for 52 years. Marcus explained the mission, the castle, the machine gun nests, the observation posts, the 7-man squad, the expected casualties. He laid it all out, no sugarcoating, no false promises, just the tactical reality of an impossible assignment. When he finished, Marcus said, "I need 7 volunteers. I will not order any man into this. You volunteer or you don't. No shame either way. This is a suicide mission disguised as a tactical objective. Most of us probably won't come back. So I'm asking, who wants to come with me?" Every hand went up. All 23 men, every single soldier in the platoon volunteered to die on an impossible mission because they trusted Marcus Stone more than they trusted the army that sent them. Marcus felt something break in his chest. These men, these brave, foolish, beautiful men who had spent their lives being told they were less than, who had grown up in an America that denied them dignity and opportunity and basic human respect, who had joined the military hoping to prove their worth to a country that had already decided they had none. And now they were volunteering to DA proving what should never have needed proof. That courage transcends color. That valor has no race. That American soldiers are American soldiers regardless of the skin they wear. Marcus chose 7, the best shots, the steadiest under fire, the men he trusted most. Private David Rivers from Detroit, Private Samuel Cross from Mississippi, Corporal William Hayes from Philadelphia, Private Isaiah Grant from Alabama, Private Thomas Kane from Chicago, Corporal Benjamin Carter from Georgia, Sergeant Michael Bradford from Boston. 8 men total, including Marcus, against hundreds of Germans in fortified positions, against mathematics that didn't work, against an army that wanted them to fail, against 52 years of denied recognition that stretched ahead like a road none of them could see. Marcus looked at his 7 volunteers, looked at their faces, memorized them, because he understood what Colonel Ashford had understood when he gave the orders. Most of these men would die, and when they did, they would die as casualties in a segregated army's experiment. They would die proving they deserved a chance they should never have had to earn. They would die for an America that would deny them equal recognition for 52 years. But they would also die as heroes, as soldiers who accomplished the impossible, as men who prove that courage has no color even when medals do. 22:30 hours. Mission briefing. Marcus spread a hand-drawn map on the ground, showed his 7 volunteers the castle, the German positions, the machine gun nest, the likely patrol routes, the fields of fire. "We're not taking the castle," Marcus said. "We're creating an opening. 3 machine gun positions here, here, and here. These 3 control the main approach. Knock them out, the Germans lose their overlapping fields of fire. The dawn assault has a chance." "How do we get there?" William Hayes asked. "Crawling, no noise. No firing unless absolutely necessary. Knives, grenades, hands. We get close before they know we're there. And if they spot us, then we fight. Simple words, enormous implications. If spotted before reaching the positions, 7 men against 200 meant death. Quick or slow death, nonetheless. But fighting meant dying on their feet instead of on their bellies. Meant proving they wouldn't run. Meant showing that black soldiers stood and fought even when the odds guaranteed failure. They checked weapons. M1 Garand rifles with 8-round en-bloc clips, fragmentation grenades, trench knives, 45 caliber pistols, maximum firepower, minimum weight. They wore dark fatigues, blackened their faces with burnt cork. No helmets, too much noise. Wool caps instead. Samuel Cross noticed something. The grenade pins were loose. Not loose enough to fall out accidentally, but looser than standard issue. Loose enough to make you wonder. He showed Marcus. Marcus inspected the grenades, thought about mentioning it to command, about filing a complaint, about demanding proper equipment. Then realized if he complained before the mission, they would say he was making excuses, finding reasons not to fight, confirming expectations about black soldiers. Better to adapt than prove them right. Marcus tightened the pins, checked each grenade carefully. Didn't know that in 1996, Army investigators would discover
Move! We have to get through!
Showing deliberate
He's bleeding
distribution
bad! We need to stop!
substandard equipment
No time!
to black
Push through the
units.
gap ahead!
Faulty weapons,
Keep
defective
moving! Don't
ammunition,
stop!
loose grenades.
How are you feeling, soldier?
It was policy, not
Can you
accident.
tell me what happened?
Systemic
been rough,
sabotage
sir. Got hit
disguised
during
as
the last
logistics. But Marcus wouldn't learn that for 51 years. On April 5th, 1945, he just
The enemy is
tightened the pins
advancing
and
from the
moved
east.
on.
We must hold this
22,
ridge.
45
Understood,
hours.
sir. What are your
Final
orders?
inspection.
Deploy reserves here.
Colonel Ashford arrived, looked over the 8 black soldiers preparing for a mission that had killed 80 white soldiers, nodded approvingly, said, "Good luck, Lieutenant. The division is counting on you." Marcus saluted, turned to lead his men out. But something made him glance back. Survival instinct. The sixth sense black Americans
This old
developed
photo
from
takes
living
me
in
back.
hostile country.
The church,
Colonel
the
Ashford
trees,
stood
and
at
us
the edge of
children.
American positions,
We had such innocent
smoking a
times
cigar,
back then.
watching them leave.
Time goes by so
smiling.
fast.
That smile told Marcus everything. This wasn't a mission. This was disposal. Send the black lieutenant and his black squad to die.
This can't be
Or
right.
They blamed their incompetence, not the impossible orders. No uncomfortable questions, no white officers lost, just 8 expendable black soldiers. Marcus wanted to turn back, wanted to refuse, wanted to demand that white officers take the mission if it mattered so much. But refusing would prove every racist belief, would justify every denial, would confirm that black soldiers lack courage when tested. So Marcus made his choice, accept that the mission was designed to fail, then succeed anyway. Not to please Colonel Ashford, not to earn recognition that would be denied, but to prove to himself and to 7 other men that black soldiers could accomplish what white soldiers could not. Marcus led his squad into Italian darkness carrying 2 certainties. The colonel wanted them dead. They were going to survive anyway. What Marcus didn't know was that by midnight, the mission would become unnecessary, that Isaiah and Benjamin would die completing an objective the Army had already abandoned. That information was still 8 hours away, hidden in orders not yet written, buried in decisions not yet made, waiting to transform valor into tragedy and sacrifice into betrayal. But for now, at 2300 hours on April 5th, 1945, Marcus Stone led 7 volunteers toward a castle on a hill, led them toward glory that would be dead for 52 years, led them toward promises that would take half a century to keep. The Italian night swallowed them, 8 shadows moving through darkness. 8 men who should have been recognized as heroes in 1945, who instead would wait 52 years for 2 words, thank you. They moved in single file through Italian darkness, Marcus on point, 7 men behind him spacing themselves at 5-yard intervals. Professional, disciplined, men who had learned that bunching up meant dying together when mortars fell or machine guns opened fire. The night air was cold, 45 degrees, ground damp from afternoon rain. Good for quiet movement. Mud absorbed footsteps. Wet earth muffled the scrape of equipment and the rasp of breathing. The moon hung low behind clouds. Enough light to navigate, not enough to expose them. 200 yards to the first German machine gun position. Marcus moved through shadows. avoided moonlight, stayed low. The Italian countryside rolled in gentle hills covered with olive groves and stone walls older than America itself. Beautiful country, wrong place for dying. But then Marcus thought there was no right place for dying, just places where death found you despite your best efforts to avoid it. 100 yards from the first position, Marcus signaled halt, hand raised, fist closed. His men froze, became part of the landscape. 7 black soldiers, invisible in darkness, using skills learned not in army training, but in a lifetime of learning how to disappear in hostile territory, how to be unseen when being seen meant danger, how to survive by becoming invisible. They crawled the last 100 yards. Marcus had learned infiltration tactics from an old sergeant during basic training. White man from Tennessee, career soldier who had fought in World War I. The sergeant had said, "Speed gets you killed. Patience keeps you breathing. Every man wants to rush, wants to close the distance fast. Get it over with. That's how you die. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Fast is dead." So Marcus crawled 6 inches, stopped, listened, crawled 6 more inches. Behind him, 7 men did the same. Synchronized movement, silent communication. The kind of teamwork that came from 6 months of shared danger and absolute trust. 45 minutes to cover 100 yards. Exhausting. Arms aching from holding body weight off the ground. Legs cramping from the constant tension of controlled movement. Fingers numb from gripping weapons. But they reached the first German position undetected. Machine gun nest, MG-42, 2-man crew. Sandbags stacked 4 feet high in a semicircle. The Germans were alert, scanning darkness, but looking for movement at distance. Not expecting anyone to crawl directly into their position. Not expecting Americans to be patient enough to spend 45 minutes covering ground that could be sprinted in 30 seconds. Marcus signaled William Hayes. Both men approached from opposite sides, crawled the final yards with infinite patience, got within 3 feet of the sandbags. Close enough to hear the Germans talking. Low voices, casual conversation. One German was smoking. Marcus could smell the tobacco. Cheap German tobacco, different from American cigarettes. Harsher. The smell triggered a memory. Marcus's father had smoked roll-your-owns during the Depression. Couldn't afford factory cigarettes. Same harsh smell, same acrid bite in the back of the throat. The Germans were discussing mundane things. Food, the weather, when the war might end. One said something about his sister's wedding in Bavaria, how he hoped to get leave. The other laughed, said something about American advance making leave unlikely. They were just soldiers, like Marcus, like his men. Young men in wrong place at wrong time fighting a war neither group had started. Human beings with families and hopes and plans for futures they might not live to see. For 5 seconds, Marcus hesitated. Then he remembered. These Germans would kill Isaiah and Benjamin without hesitation. Would kill David and Samuel and William and Thomas and Michael and Bradford without pause. This was war. Hesitation meant death. Mercy was a luxury soldiers couldn't afford. Marcus looked at Hayes. Hayes nodded. Both men stood simultaneously. Came over the sandbags before the Germans could react. Marcus hit the first German with his trench knife. Drove the blade up under the rib cage at an angle, seeking the heart. The German's eyes went wide. Surprise first, then confusion, then nothing. He died instantly. Silently, just a small exhalation. Last breath leaving lungs that would never draw another. Marcus felt the moment, felt life end in his hands. The German was maybe 20 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes going glassy, face that could have been any farm boy's face in any country. In another life, Marcus thought they might have met as friends, shared a beer, talked about girls and harvests and the price of grain. But this wasn't another life. This was war. And war meant killings or being killed. Simple arithmetic, brutal mathematics, their lives for his men's lives. Hayes took the second German the same way. Clean, quiet, efficient. The kind of kill that came from training and necessity, not hatred. Professional soldiers doing a terrible job with professional skill. 2 Germans dead, 1 machine gun silenced, 8 Americans still alive. Marcus pulled the knife out, wiped the blade on the German's uniform. His hands were trembling. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from the shock of intimate violence. This was the first time Marcus Stone had looked into a man's eyes while ending his life. He had shot Germans before. Distance made it easier, impersonal, point and squeeze and watch them fall. But a knife meant feeling the moment, feeling the blade slide between ribs, feeling the body's final shudder, feeling the exact instant when soul departed flesh. Marcus had killed to create opportunity for his men to live. The arithmetic of war was brutal and simple, their lives for his men's lives. He would make that trade every time, even if it haunted him, even if he saw that 20-year-old German's surprised eyes every night for the next 65 years, even if the memory carved a piece out of his soul that would never heal. They moved to the second position, 50 yards north, another machine gun nest, same approach, crawling, patience, silence. But this time it took an hour. The moon was brighter now, clouds had thinned, more exposed ground between them and the target. They had to wait for cloud cover, time their movement to shadows, freeze when moonlight broke through, move during darkness. War was 90% waiting and 10% violence. Marcus had learned to endure both. They reached the second position. This nest had 3 Germans, gun crew plus an observer with binoculars. More difficult. Marcus couldn't take 3 men simultaneously with knives. The mathematics didn't work. Even with Hayes helping, 3 against 2 in close quarters meant noise, meant struggle, meant the 3rd German raising alarm while the first 2 died. Marcus needed a different approach. He pulled a fragmentation grenade from his belt, the one with the loose pin that Samuel Cross had noticed. Marcus had tightened it, checked it 3 times. Standard Mark II grenade, pineapple-shaped, 4-second fuse, lethal radius 15 yards, shrapnel effective to 30, but noise would compromise everything. The explosion would alert every German position on the hillside, would transform a stealth mission into a firefight, would expose them 150 yards inside enemy lines with 200 Germans between them and safety. Marcus made the calculation every officer makes. Sacrifice stealth to preserve lives. His men's lives mattered more than surprise. 3 Germans versus 2 Americans in close quarters meant casualties he couldn't accept. Better to use the grenade. Better to fight their way out than lose men trying to maintain silence. Marcus signaled his squad to take cover, positioned them behind rocks and a low stone wall, explained with hand signs what would happen. Grenade, then advance. Suppress any German response with rifle fire. Bradford nodded understanding. The other men shifted positions, checked weapons, prepared for violence. Marcus yanked the pin, held the grenade for 1 second, 2 seconds, cooking it, reducing the time Germans would have to react after it landed, then threw hard, directly into the machine gun nest. The grenade detonated. Explosion lit the darkness like a magnesium flash. White light, concussive wave, the sound of physical things slamming into Marcus's chest, debris and dirt raining down, smoke and dust billowing. All 3 Germans fell. The machine gun toppled sideways off its mount. 2 nests destroyed, but the explosion compromised everything. German positions across the hillside erupted with activity. Shouts in German, commands and responses, alarms spreading through the defensive line like wildfire. Flares shot into the sky, parachute flares that drifted down on small parachutes, burning bright, turning night into artificial day. Searchlights swept the ground, powerful beams cutting through darkness hunting for targets. Marcus and his men were exposed. 150 yards inside the German perimeter, surrounded by 200 alerted enemy soldiers who now knew Americans had penetrated their lines. Colonel Ashford's smile made sense now. Even if they succeeded at destroying the machine gun nests, they would never escape alive. The mission was designed to get them killed. Whether they failed tactically or succeeded, then got overwhelmed during extraction didn't matter. Either way, convenient casualties. Either way, 8 fewer black soldiers that command had to worry about. But Marcus Stone hadn't survived 6 months of combat by accepting what command expected. Hadn't brought his men through impossible situations by following conventional tactics. He made a decision. "We're exposed," Marcus said. "Aggressive advance. Keep moving. Don't give them time to coordinate fire." Hayes looked at him. "Toward the castle, Lieutenant, toward the castle." Close the distance. Every instinct said retreat, fall back, escape while confusion still reigned. But retreat meant crossing 150 yards of open ground under fire from prepared positions. Meant running away from Germans who knew the terrain and had pre-registered their weapons on every piece of cover. Meant death. Training said advance, close the distance, get inside the German reaction cycle, create chaos, make them fight at close range where American rifles were as effective as German machine guns. Maybe survive. The squad stood and ran forward, toward the Germans, not away. German rifles opened fire, sharp cracks echoing across the hillside. MG-42s from higher positions joined in. The sound was distinctive, 1,200 rounds per minute, so fast it sounded like tearing cloth. Tracer rounds arced across the darkness. Every fifth round a tracer, glowing streaks showing the path of bullets invisible in darkness. Marcus ran in a crouch, zigzagging, changing direction every 5 steps, making himself a harder target. Bullets cracked past his head. Supersonic snap. The sound arriving after the bullet had already passed. One round tore through his sleeve without touching skin. Hot fabric. No blood. Close. He spotted the 3rd machine gun position 40 yards ahead. The crew was setting up, bringing the gun to bear on his squad. If that gun opened fire, his men would be cut down in seconds. 7 Americans in the open against an MG-42 meant death. Marcus didn't think, just reacted. Sprinted directly at the position, close to 20 yards. The German gunner was swinging the MG-42 toward him. Marcus could see the barrel tracking, could see the gunner's face. Young, maybe 19, focused, professional. Marcus fired his Garand, 8-round semi-automatic. Aim shots, not spray and pray, controlled fire. Each shot deliberate. The gunner fell, chest shots, center mass. The loader grabbed for the gun, tried to swing it toward Marcus. Marcus fired again. 3 more rounds, Garand empty. The en-bloc clip ejected with its distinctive ping, metallic sound that every soldier recognized. The sound that told enemies your rifle was empty. The sound that got American soldiers killed when Germans heard it and charged. Marcus dropped the empty Garand. No time to reload. Pulled his .45 pistol, closed to 10 yards. The loader was bringing the machine gun around. Marcus fired twice, .45 caliber rounds at close range. The loader fell. A 3rd German emerged from behind the sandbags, rifle in hands, bringing it up. Marcus shot him in the chest. The German dropped. 3 Germans dead in 15 seconds. 3rd machine gun nest neutralized. Marcus retrieved his Garand, loaded a fresh 8-round clip. The clip slid home with a satisfying click. Weapon ready. But his hands were shaking now. Adrenaline and exhaustion. 6 months of combat. 1 impossible mission. 3 machine gun nests destroyed against odds that should have made success impossible. Mission objectives complete. But completing objectives didn't mean survival. That required escaping 200 angry Germans who now knew exactly where the Americans were. Behind Marcus, his squad was engaged with German infantry emerging from positions around the castle. Hayes had his rifle up, firing controlled bursts, 3-round groups, conserving ammunition. Rivers was down on one knee, methodical shooting, 1 target at a time. The Detroit hunter treating Germans like deer, patient, precise. Cross was providing covering fire while Kane reloaded. Bradford was directing their defensive positions, calling out targets, coordinating fields of fire. The kind of tactical control that would have earned a white sergeant commendation. That would earn Bradford nothing but a Purple Heart when he caught shrapnel 2 hours from now. But Isaiah Grant was down. Marcus saw him fall, saw the bullet catch Isaiah in the chest, saw blood spreading across his uniform, dark stain on dark fabric, saw Isaiah fall backward, rifle clattering on rocks, saw the way his body hit the ground. Heavy, final. The way bodies fall when life has left them. Hayes reached Isaiah first, dropped beside him, checked for pulse, checked the wound, looked up at Marcus, shook his head. He's gone, Lieutenant, no. Check again. Hayes checked again, pressed fingers to Isaiah's neck. searching for heartbeat that wasn't there. Looked at the wound. Chest, through the lung, probably hit the heart. Massive internal bleeding. Hayes shook his head again. Same result. Lieutenant, he's gone. Marcus ran to Isaiah, knelt beside him. 21-year-old kid from Birmingham who had witnessed a lynching at age 12. Who had joined the army because fighting Germans seemed cleaner than fighting American racism. Who still wrote his mother every week. Letters full of hope and longing and the careful optimism of young men in war who couldn't quite believe they might not survive. Isaiah was still conscious, struggling to breathe, blood bubbling at his lips, lung shot, drowning in his own blood, eyes finding Marcus's face in the darkness, focusing, recognizing. Isaiah grabbed Marcus's jacket with a bloody hand, pulled Marcus close, mouth moving, trying to form words, using the last of his strength to say something important, something that mattered. Marcus leaned in, put his ear inches from Isaiah's lips, strained to hear over the battlefield noise. Gunfire, explosions, shouts, the ringing in Marcus's ears from too many grenades too close. Isaiah whispered something. Marcus couldn't make it out. Voice too quiet, too weak. The words lost beneath the chaos of dying men and desperate combat. Say again, Isaiah. I can't hear you. Isaiah tried again. Gathered his failing strength. Whispered something. A question. Marcus could tell it was a question from the inflection, from the way Isaiah's eyes held his gaze, searching, needing an answer, but Marcus couldn't hear the words, couldn't make them out. The battlefield was too loud. Death was too close. Isaiah's voice was too faint. Then Isaiah's hand went slack, fell away from Marcus's jacket. The light went out of his eyes. Private Isaiah Grant, age 21, died at 01:15 hours on April 6, 1945. Marcus knelt there, holding a dead soldier, unable to hear his last words. The not knowing carved a hole in Marcus's chest. What did Isaiah want to say? What final message did this young man want to leave? What question was so important that he used his last breath to ask it, Isaiah? Isaiah, stay with me. What did you say? But Isaiah was gone. Eyes still open, seeing nothing. Face peaceful now. Pain ended. War over. Just a dead soldier on a hillside in Italy. One of millions. One of tens of millions. One Black American who died fighting for a country that would deny him equal recognition for 52 years. Marcus closed Isaiah's eyes, made a promise. I'll tell them you mattered, Isaiah. I'll tell them you were brave. I'll tell them you died fighting for an America that didn't deserve you. No time to grieve. German forces were concentrating. More machine guns opening fire from higher positions on the castle hillside. Mortar rounds starting to fall. The Germans had found their range. Explosions bracketed the squad's position. Shrapnel whining through the air. Hot metal fragments that could kill as surely as bullets. Marcus spotted a German observation post on the ridgeline. Stone structure. Partially underground, reinforced. A forward observer was up there directing the mortar fire, calling out coordinates, adjusting aim. As long as that observer lived, the mortars would continue walking fire directly onto Marcus's squad. Would bracket them, box them in, kill them with high explosive and shrapnel. Hayes, Carter, with me. Everyone else suppressing fire on the castle. Marcus ran toward the observation post. Hayes and Benjamin Carter followed. 60 yards uphill, exposed ground. German rifles tracked their movement. Bullets kicked up dirt around their boots. Geysers of earth and rock. A mortar round landed 15 yards away. Explosion like a physical blow. Shrapnel whistled overhead. Hot metal singing through the air. They reached the observation post. Heavy wooden door. Closed. Reinforced from inside. Marcus pulled his last grenade. The final fragmentation grenade. After this, they were down to rifles and pistols and knives. Down to close quarters weapons and the will to use them. Marcus yanked the pin, kicked the door, didn't budge, reinforced. He wedged the grenade against the door frame, right at the hinges, shouted down. Hayes and Benjamin threw themselves flat. Marcus did the same. Grenade detonated. The door blew inward, hinges tearing off, wood splintering, smoke and debris. Marcus was up and moving before the smoke cleared. went through the doorway with his pistol raised. Two Germans inside. One was the forward observer, maps spread on a table, radio equipment, field telephone, binoculars, the tools of death at distance. The equipment that let men kill without seeing faces. The other German was a guard, rifle in hands. The guard brought his weapon up. Marcus shot him twice. Center mass, 45 caliber rounds. The guard fell against the stone wall, slid down, left a red smear. The observer reached for a pistol on the table. Hayes came through the door behind Marcus. Fired once. M1 Garand at close range. The observer fell across his maps, blood spreading across terrain features and unit positions and the careful military notation of death. Marcus grabbed the radio, smashed it against the wall, vacuum tubes shattering, then gathered the maps from under the dead observer's body. German defensive positions, minefields, troop concentrations, artillery positions. Intelligence valuable enough to justify the mission if Marcus could get it back to American lines. He stuffed the maps inside his jacket, then realized their situation. Trapped inside a German observation post, 60 yards from their own squad, surrounded by enemy forces. The only route back was across open ground under fire. Benjamin looked at Marcus. "What's the plan, Lieutenant?" "We run fast. Don't stop. Covering fire from our position should keep German heads down." Should, maybe, possibly. Marcus was running out of certainties, running out of good options, down to desperate choices and prayers that desperation might be enough. They emerged from the observation post at a full sprint. German rifles opened fire immediately, machine guns from the castle, mortars starting to bracket their position again. The observer Marcus had killed was being replaced. New coordinates being called in. Marcus ran harder than he had ever run in his life. Legs pumping, lungs burning, 60 yards to safety, 50 yards, 40 yards. Benjamin Carter cried out, fell. Marcus heard him, heard the cry of pain, heard the sound of a body hitting the ground. Turned, saw Benjamin down, saw him trying to get up, failing. Marcus and Hayes reached him simultaneously. Benjamin was on the ground, leg twisted wrong, femur shattered. Marcus could see bone protruding through skin, white bone, red blood, massive blood loss. The femoral artery was damaged, blood pumping out with each heartbeat. Too much blood, too fast. Benjamin was going into shock, pale, sweating, pupils dilated.
Move,
Body's
move, we have to get through.
Catastrophic injury.
He's bleeding bad, we need to
Shutting
stop.
down non-essential
No time,
functions,
push through the gap
trying
ahead.
to preserve the core, failing.
Keep moving, don't stop.
Marcus grabbed one arm, Hayes
How are you
grabbed the
feeling,
other.
soldier?
They dragged Benjamin
Can you
toward
tell
their
me what
squad
happened?
position.
It's been rough,
30
sir.
yards,
Got hit during the last
25
push.
yards, 20 yards. Benjamin was screaming now, pain breaking through shock. Every movement tearing
The enemy
the
is
leg
advancing
wound
from the
wider.
east. We must hold
Bone
this
grating
ridge.
against
Understood,
bone.
sir. What are your orders?
Muscle
Deploy
and
reserves
tissue
here.
ripping. The German soldier appeared from behind a rock outcrop. 10 yards away, rifle raised, aiming at Marcus. Before he could fire, David Rivers shot him from the American position. Perfect shot across 30 yards in darkness. Perfect shot under pressure. Perfect shot that saved Marcus's life.
This old photo
The
takes
German
me
fell.
back.
They
The
reached their
church, the
position,
trees, and us
pulled
children.
Benjamin behind
We had
cover.
such innocent times
Samuel
back then.
Cross immediately started
Time goes
working
by
on
so
him.
fast.
Applied a tourniquet. Rubber tubing twisted tight with a rifle cleaning rod, trying to stop the bleeding. But the wound was too severe. Femur shattered.
This can't
and
be
femoral
right.
Artery damage. The tourniquet slowed the bleeding but couldn't stop it. Benjamin was dying. Everyone could see it. Benjamin grabbed Marcus's arm. Grip surprisingly strong for a dying man, pulled Marcus close. "Tell my wife. Tell Eleanor I fought for them. You'll tell her yourself, Sergeant. You're going home." Benjamin smiled weakly. "Don't lie to a dying man, Lieutenant. It's beneath you. For our children. Tell her it mattered. Tell Rebecca and James their daddy died trying to make their lives better." Marcus felt tears on his face. Didn't remember starting to cry. "I promise, Benjamin. I'll tell them everything. What you did here, why you fought, how brave you were. Not brave, just hopeful. That's all black fathers have, Lieutenant. Hope that our children won't have to fight the way we did. Hope they'll inherit something better than what we got. Hope that maybe dying here means they'll live freer there." Benjamin's voice was getting weaker. Blood loss taking him, shock deepening, the body shutting down system by system, heart struggling, brains starving for oxygen, life leaving in increments. Promise me, Lieutenant. Promise you'll tell them. I promise. Benjamin died 30 seconds later. Last breath, then stillness. Age 26, married, father of 2 children who would grow up without him. Children who would only know their father through photographs in Marcus Stone's annual phone calls, through promises kept across decades, through stories told and retold until they became legend rather than memory. Samuel Cross closed Benjamin's eyes, respectful, gentle, the way you close the eyes of a friend. Marcus checked his remaining men, started with 8, including himself, now 6. Isaiah and Benjamin dead, the others wounded to varying degrees. Hayes had shrapnel in his shoulder, nothing serious but bleeding. Rivers had taken a bullet graze across his ribs, shallow, painful, not life-threatening. Cross was favoring his left leg, twisted ankle maybe. Kane had blood on his face from flying debris. Bradford seemed unhurt, but exhausted. They all were. They had accomplished the mission objectives. 3 machine gun nests destroyed, observation posts neutralized, German defensive coordination disrupted, intelligence captured, 26 Germans killed. The dawn assault would have a better chance of success because of what 8 black soldiers had done in the night. But the cost was 2 good men dead. Isaiah Grant, Benjamin Carter, 2 soldiers who had proved that courage transcends race. 2 men whose families would wait 52 years to hear that their sacrifice mattered. And the night wasn't over. They still had to get back to American lines. 800 yards carrying wounded, exhausted, low on ammunition, surrounded by Germans who were searching for them. Germans who wanted revenge for dead comrades and penetrated defenses in the humiliation of being beaten by a handful of American soldiers. Marcus looked at his 5 remaining men, looked at Isaiah's body, looked at Benjamin's body. Made a decision. We're pulling back. Mission accomplished. We stay here. We all die. We move now. Maybe we make it. What about the wounded, Bradford asked. We carry them. What about Grant and Carter? Marcus looked at the 2 dead soldiers, wanted to bring them home, wanted to give them proper burial, wanted their families to have bodies to mourn over. But carrying 2 dead men and 2 wounded men meant slower movement, meant less ability to fight if contacted, meant higher chance everyone died. We mark the position. We come back for them after the assault. Right now we focus on getting the living home. It was the right tactical decision, the only decision. But it felt like betrayal, felt like abandoning brothers, felt like one more way the system failed black soldiers. Even in death, even in sacrifice, they were left behind. Marcus took Isaiah's dog tags, took Benjamin's, would make sure their families got them, would make sure someone remembered, would keep the promises he had made. Then Marcus led his 5 remaining men into the darkness, led them toward American lines 800 yards away, led them on a withdrawal that would take 3 more hours and cost 2 more wounded, led them through hell toward a revelation that would transform valor into tragedy. Because at 0900 hours, Colonel Ashford would visit Marcus in a medical tent, would congratulate him on mission success, would mention almost casually that new orders had come through around midnight, would reveal that Castle Agenalfi had been deemed strategically unnecessary after all, would tell Marcus that Isaiah Grant had died 15 minutes after the mission became optional, that Benjamin Carter had died 105 minutes after command decided the objective no longer mattered, would explain it as operational confusion, radio difficulty, the fog of war. Marcus would understand it as something else, as deliberate abandonment, as racism so casual that letting black soldiers die unnecessarily didn't even register as a moral question. But that revelation was still hours away. At 0200 hours on April 6th, Marcus Stone only knew that 2 good men were dead and 5 others were struggling to survive. Only knew that he had kept his tactical promises, but still had to keep his personal ones. Only knew that the night had cost more than he wanted to pay, but less than it could have. They moved through darkness, 6 soldiers carrying the weight of what they had done and what they had lost. 6 men who had proved they deserved recognition they would be denied for 52 years. 6 men heading home to an army that would downgrade their medals and minimize their achievements and systematically deny them equality. 6 men who had accomplished the impossible and would wait half a century for 2 words. Thank you, 0130 hours, German counterattack. Marcus saw them coming across open ground. 12 men, infantry squad advancing from the castle, professional soldiers moving in tactical formation, covering each other, using terrain. The kind of soldiers who made wars last years instead of months. They were trying to retake the captured machine gun positions, trying to reestablish their defensive line, trying to restore the interlocking fields of fire that 8 American soldiers had destroyed. Form a defensive line, Marcus said. Conserve ammunition, aim shots only, wait until they're close. His 5 remaining men spread out in a shallow depression. 6 soldiers total, including Marcus. Hat provided minimal cover. But they had good fields of fire. The Germans would have to cross 30 yards of open ground to reach them. 30 yards of killing ground where American rifles could do their work. The Germans advanced cautiously. They knew Americans were in the area, knew their positions had been penetrated, knew 3 machine gun nests were silent and an observation post was destroyed. But they didn't know exact American positions. Didn't know they were walking towards 6 men who had already killed 26 of their comrades. Marcus let them come. 25 yards, 20 yards, 15 yards. Close enough to see faces in the darkness. Young faces, old faces, tired faces. Faces that could have been American or German or Italian or any nationality. War made everyone look the same eventually. Exhausted, frightened, determined to survive. Now, 6 American rifles opened fire simultaneously. The German formation collapsed. Men fell, others scattered seeking cover where none existed. Some tried to return fire, others tried to retreat. Most just died. Marcus fired his Garand, 8 rounds, empty, reloaded, fired again. Muscle memory, the rhythm of combat, point, squeeze, feel the recoil, acquire next target, point, squeeze, again, until the rifle clicked empty and you reloaded without thinking. Hayes was shooting methodically beside him. 1 shot per target, no wasted ammunition. Bradford was calling targets. Cross was firing from behind a rock. Rivers was doing what Detroit hunters do, picking targets with patience and precision. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, 9 Germans lay dead or dying in the open ground. 3 had retreated back toward the castle, disappeared into the darkness. Gone to report that Americans were still in the defensive perimeter, still fighting, still dangerous. But Thomas Kane was hit. Marcus heard him grunt, heard the sound of impact, rifle round through the shoulder. Kane was conscious, still breathing, but losing blood. The round had gone through clean, entry wound in the back, exit wound in the front. Good news and bad news. Good because it meant no bullet fragments to dig out. Bad because it meant 2 holes bleeding instead of 1. Cross worked on him with a field dressing. Compress, bandage, pressure. But Kane needed medical attention, needed evacuation to American lines, needed treatment they couldn't provide in a shallow depression surrounded by 200 Germans. Marcus made the decision. We're pulling back, mission accomplished. We stay here, we all die. We move now, maybe we make it. What about the wounded? Bradford asked. We carry them. They fashioned a makeshift stretcher from rifles and uniform jackets. Laid Kane on it. Hayes and Rivers would carry him. Marcus would take point. Cross and Bradford would provide rear security. 6 men moving through hostile territory, carrying wounded, exhausted, low on ammunition. 800 yards of safety. The withdrawal took 3 hours. They moved slowly, cautiously. German patrols were active, searching for the American squad that had caused such damage, hunting for the soldiers who had penetrated their lines and killed their comrades and destroyed their defensive positions. Twice they had to hide. Let German soldiers pass within yards. Hold breath. Don't move. Pray the Germans didn't look down. Pray darkness and exhaustion made the Germans careless. Pray that luck, which had held this long, would hold a little longer. The first patrol passed at 0230 hours. 5 Germans moving through an olive grove, talking quietly, smoking, nervous, looking for Americans but not really wanting to find them. The kind of soldiers who were going through the motions, doing their duty but hoping someone else would make contact first. Marcus and his men froze, became part of the landscape. 6 black soldiers invisible in darkness, using skills learned not from army training, but from lifetimes of learning how to disappear, how to be unseen in hostile places, how to survive by becoming invisible to those who wish them harm. The Germans passed, moved on, never knew that 6 American soldiers were lying in the grass 10 feet away, never knew how close they came to dying or killing. The second patrol passed at 0300 hours, larger group, 10 Germans, more alert, more professional, moving with purpose. These were hunters, not prey. Soldiers who were looking for contact and prepared to handle it. Marcus signaled his men to stay still. Absolute stillness, no breathing, no movement, nothing that would draw attention. The Germans passed within 5 yards. So close, Marcus could hear their breathing, could smell their cigarettes and their sweat and the gun oil on their weapons. One German stopped, right next to where Marcus was lying, stood there, looking around, sensing something wrong but not seeing it. The German's boot was inches from Marcus's hand. If the German looked down, if he saw the Americans, the firefight would be point blank and brutal and probably fatal for both sides. The German stood there for 30 seconds, scanning the darkness. Then another German called him. "Come on, keep moving." The German moved on, never looked down. Marcus waited until they were gone, until the sound of their footsteps faded, until the night was quiet again except for distant gunfire and the whistle of wind through olive trees. Then he signaled his men to move. At 0330 hours, they had to fight. A German patrol spotted them in a grove of trees, 5 Germans moving through the same area. Both groups saw each other simultaneously. Distance 40 yards, too far for grenades, too close for comfort. The kind of meeting engagement where reactions determine survival. Marcus fired first. His Garand barked. The lead German fell, the others scattered, took cover behind trees. Returned fire, bullets snapped through the branches, tore bark from trees, whined off rocks. Rivers laid down the stretcher, brought his rifle up, fired. Another German fell. Hayes was firing from behind a tree. Bradford was calling targets. Cross-flanked right, caught a German soldier in profile, shot him. The firefight was brief, intense. When it ended, 4 Germans were dead. 1 had escaped. But the escaped German would alert other patrols, would tell them where the Americans were, would bring reinforcements. They had maybe 15 minutes before German forces converged on their position. "Move now, don't stop." They ran, and as much as exhausted men carrying a wounded comrade could run. Marcus pushed them, drove them. Every step was agony, legs trembling from fatigue, arms shaking from carrying weapons and equipment, and wounded. Kane was semi-conscious, moaning with every jostle, each movement sending pain through his shattered shoulder. German forces were converging. They could hear shouts, whistles, coordination, the sound of an army mobilizing, the sound of hunters closing in on prey. Mortar rounds started falling, walking forward, trying to bracket their position. The Germans had radioed ahead. New forward observers were directing fire. 400 yards from American lines. 300 yards. Marcus could see friendly positions ahead, could see muzzle flashes from American rifles providing covering fire, could see soldiers waving them forward. Medics ready with stretchers and supplies. 200 yards. 100 yards. A German machine gun opened fire from their right flank. MG-42, recognizable by its high rate of fire, its distinctive sound like tearing cloth. Bullets tore through the trees around them, chewed bark, snapped branches, filled the air with flying debris. Samuel Cross cried out, spun, fell, shot through the side. Marcus's heart stopped. Not Cross, not another one. They couldn't lose another man. Not when they were so close. Not when safety was 100 yards away. But they couldn't stop. Couldn't help immediately. Had to keep moving or everyone died. Cross was conscious, trying to stand, bleeding heavily, dark blood spreading across his uniform. Too much blood. Marcus grabbed him, threw Cross's arm over his shoulder, kept moving. Hayes and Rivers still had Kane on the stretcher. Bradford was providing covering fire, burning through the last of his ammunition, making every round count. 50 yards to American lines. American soldiers were shouting encouragement, waving them forward, running out to meet them, ready to grab the wounded and pull them to safety. A mortar round landed close. The explosion knocked Marcus off his feet, ears ringing, dirt and debris raining down. Tasted blood and cordite in Italian earth. Vision blurred, world spinning, forced himself up, grabbed Cross again. Stumbled forward. 25 yards, American soldiers reached them. Grabbed the wounded, grabbed Cross and Kane, pulled them into cover, hands reaching, voices shouting, safety. Finally, impossibly, they had made it. Marcus collapsed behind the defensive line, gasped for air, tried to stop shaking, couldn't. His body was done, had given everything, had no more to give. Let the shaking come. Let the exhaustion take him. Let the knowledge that they had survived wash over him like a wave. They had made it. Started with 8 men, 6 came back alive. Isaiah and Benjamin dead on that hillside. Kane and Cross critically wounded but alive. Hayes and Rivers and Bradford wounded but mobile. But they had accomplished the impossible. Destroyed 3 machine gun nests. Eliminated the forward observation post. Killed at least 26 Germans. Captured valuable intelligence about German defensive positions. Created an opening for the dawn assault. The cost was 2 good men dead and 4 wounded. The cost was promises Marcus would have to keep for 52 years. The cost was memories that would never fade and ghosts that would never leave. But they had proved what needed proving. That black soldiers could fight, could lead, could accomplish what white soldiers could not. That courage transcended race and valor had no color. Even if America would take 52 years to admit it, 0600 hours. The main assault launched. 2 companies of American infantry supported by artillery and armor. They advanced through the gap Marcus's squad had created, through the silence where German machine guns should have been firing, through the chaos where German coordination should have been directing defensive fire. The German defensive line, weakened and disorganized by the night infiltration, couldn't coordinate effective resistance. Castle Agonalfi fell by 0800 hours. American forces secured the position. The Gothic line defense in that sector collapsed. The way to northern Italy lay open. Marcus watched from a medical tent while medics bandaged his wounds, minor shrapnel injuries, exhaustion, dehydration, nothing serious. He would be back on duty in 24 hours. 0900 hours. Colonel Richard Ashford visited. The colonel stood at the entrance to the medical tent, looked at Marcus. White officer, career soldier, the man who had given the orders, the man who had smiled watching them depart, the man who expected them to die. You're Lieutenant Stone. Yes, sir. Hell of a job last night. Hell of a job. Your company commander is recommending you for the Medal of Honor. Thank you, sir. Marcus paused. We lost 2 men, Isaiah Grant and Benjamin Carter. Unfortunate, but mission accomplished. Marcus felt something cold forming in his chest. A suspicion. A dread. Sir, when did the dawn assault launch? 0600 hours. Right on schedule. And the castle taken by 0800. Your squad's work made the difference, Lieutenant. The cold feeling spread. Marcus asked carefully, Sir, when were the final attack plans confirmed? Colonel Ashford hesitated, just for a moment, then answered with the same satisfaction Marcus had seen in his smile before the mission. Between you and me, Lieutenant, new orders came through around midnight. Division considered bypassing Castle Agonalfi entirely. Different approach. Your mission became well optional around 0000 hours. The world tilted. Optional, Sir. Command decided the castle wasn't strategically necessary after all. But your squad's success made the decision academic. Marcus felt the cold spread through his entire body, felt it freeze his blood and stop his heart and turn his breath to ice. Mission became unnecessary at midnight. Isaiah Grant died at 0115 hours. 75 minutes after the mission became optional. Benjamin Carter died at 0145 hours. 105 minutes after the orders changed. Nobody told them. Nobody recalled them. Let them continue fighting and dying for an objective that no longer mattered. Let them complete a mission that had been abandoned. Let Isaiah and Benjamin die for nothing. Marcus's voice came out flat. Dead. Sir, why weren't we recalled? Operational confusion, Lieutenant. You were out of radio contact. By the time we considered recall, you'd already engaged. Couldn't pull you back mid-mission. Marcus knew this was a lie. They had radio communication until 0100 hours, an hour after the orders changed, before Isaiah died. They could have been recalled, could have been told to break contact and return, could have saved 2 lives, but somebody made a decision. Don't recall them, let them finish. If they die, they're just 8 black soldiers who were expendable anyway. Colonel Ashford continued, Medal of Honor recommendation is already being processed. You should be proud, Lieutenant. What about my men, Sir Grant and Carter? Do their families get notified properly? Standard casualty notifications. KIA in action, Purple Hearts posthumously. They deserve more than that, sir. They died completing a mission that saved American lives. The colonel's expression changed, hardened. The mask slipped. The satisfaction returned. Listen, Lieutenant, you did good work. Don't push your luck. Be grateful for what you're getting. Your men died doing their duty. That's what soldiers do. Their families will receive appropriate notifications and benefits. But don't expect more. The Medal of Honor will go to you if it goes to anyone. Your men, they'll get what black soldiers always get. Recognition within limits deemed appropriate. Marcus understood. The mission had been designed to fail. When it succeeded, command took credit. When men died unnecessarily, command called it operational confusion. When recommendations went up for recognition, they would be processed according to race, not merit. Isaiah Grant and Benjamin Carter died for nothing. The mission was unnecessary. Recognition would be denied. Their families would receive form letters and flags and empty condolences. And Marcus Stone, if he complained, would be labeled a troublemaker. Ungrateful. Confirming every stereotype about black soldiers being difficult, about black officers not understanding the chain of command. So Marcus said the only thing he could say. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. But inside he made a different promise. Someday, somehow he would tell the truth. About Isaiah and Benjamin. About the unnecessary mission. About the colonel's smile. About the 52-year wait for recognition. About all of it. He just didn't know it would take 52 years. May 2nd, 1945. Marcus received the Distinguished Service Cross in a formal ceremony. The Medal of Honor recommendation had been downgraded. Someone at the War Department had decided that a black officer receiving the nation's highest military honor would send the wrong message, would challenge assumptions, would create uncomfortable questions. The war in Europe ended 5 days later. May 7th, VE Day, victory in Europe, celebrations in the streets, ticker tape parades, soldiers coming home to grateful nations and proud families. Marcus Stone came home to rejection. December 1945. Marcus returned to the United States, age 26, combat veteran, decorated officer, one of the most effective soldiers in the Italian campaign. He applied for positions with police departments, rejected. Applied for jobs with fire departments, rejected. Federal jobs that specifically recruited veterans, rejected. The reason was never stated explicitly, but Marcus understood. America in 1945 didn't want black war heroes. Didn't want black men who had proven themselves equal to or better than white soldiers. Didn't want reminders that racism, not capability, determined recognition and opportunity. He eventually found work with the Veterans Administration, helping other black veterans navigate the bureaucracy, access benefits, file claims, meaningful work, important work, but not what Isaiah and Benjamin died for. 1947. Marcus married Eleanor Walsh, school teacher from Wyoming, same first name as Benjamin Carter's wife. Marcus never told her about the coincidence, but it felt like a sign, a promise calling to be kept. They built a life, raised 2 children, bought a house, became active in the NAACP. Marcus spoke at schools and churches and community centers. Told his story, not to glorify himself, but to honor Isaiah and Benjamin, to keep his promise to tell Benjamin's children their father died trying to make their lives better. Every April 5th, Marcus called Isaiah Grant's family in Birmingham, called Benjamin Carter's family in Valdosta, told them your sons mattered. They were the bravest men I ever knew. Years passed, decades, civil rights movement, desegregation, voting rights, progress. Slow, painful, never fast enough. 1989, Marcus's daughter died. Cancer, age 42. 1994, Eleanor died. Heart failure, 3 years before the Medal of Honor ceremony. She never saw Marcus vindicated, never witnessed America admit what she had always known, that her husband was a hero who deserved equal recognition. 1992, Dr. Jonathan Mitchell, historian at Shaw University, discovered a discrepancy. Between 1941 and 1945, over 400 medals of honor were awarded. 0 went to black soldiers, despite over 1 million black Americans in uniform, despite documented exceptional valor. Mitchell found 7 cases where black soldiers were recommended for the Medal of Honor, 7 cases where recommendations were downgraded based on race, not merit. Marcus Stone's case was one of 7. Mitchell presented his findings to the Army. The Army resisted, claimed records were incomplete, claimed standards were consistently applied, claimed race played no factor. But Mitchell persisted, other historians joined, civil rights organizations applied pressure. Congressional representatives asked questions. Media attention grew. 1996. The Army authorized a comprehensive review, examined hundreds of cases, applied modern standards, evaluated evidence objectively. Conclusion: 7 black soldiers had been denied the Medal of Honor due to racial discrimination. Marcus Stone, age 76, was the only one still alive. October 1996. The phone rang. Marcus answered. "Mr. Stone, this is Major Sarah Chen, Army Historical Division. I'm calling about your service in Italy." April 1945. Marcus's heart rate increased. "Yes, Major, sir, we've been reviewing Medal of Honor recommendations from World War II. Your case was flagged. Based on our review, there's strong evidence your recommendation was improperly downgraded in 1945. We're recommending correction." "This would mean Medal of Honor, sir. 51 years late, but proper recognition." Marcus interrupted. "Major, are Isaiah Grant's and Benjamin Carter's families still alive? They deserve to know their sons' deaths mattered." Silence. "Then, sir, this is about your Medal of Honor. It's about 7 men. Major, I'm just the only one who lived long enough. Isaiah Grant died at 21. Benjamin Carter at 26. If this gets corrected, their families need to know first." "I understand, sir. We'll make sure families are properly notified." "One more thing, Major. What did Isaiah Grant whisper when he died?" "Sir Isaiah Grant, Thrawn." "Last words." "I couldn't hear." "It's haunted me for 51 years. Did your investigation find anything, sir?" "I don't have that information." Marcus hung up, sat in silence. Eleanor's photograph on the mantel. 52 years of waiting. Finally recognition. But recognition couldn't bring Isaiah and Benjamin back. Couldn't give Eleanor the vindication she deserved. Couldn't change the fact that this medal should have been awarded in 1945. Better late than never. But late still hurt. January 13th, 1997. White House ceremony. Marcus Stone, age 77, stood at attention while President Clinton draped the Medal of Honor around his neck. Around him, 6 families receiving posthumous medals. 6 men who died decades before recognition. Marcus spoke. "This medal isn't just for me. It's for every black soldier who fought in World War II and never received recognition they deserved. It's for Isaiah Grant and Benjamin Carter." 52 years is a long time to wait, but better late than never. And maybe this will help America understand that courage has no color. The ceremony ended. Media asked, "How does it feel after 52 years?" Marcus's answer was measured. "It feels like America finally admitted what Isaiah and Benjamin already knew, that we were equal soldiers. It feels like vindication, but also like tragedy that it took so long." Marcus lived 13 more years, continued speaking about his experiences, continued calling Isaiah's and Benjamin's families every April 5th, continued keeping promises. 2009, 1 year before Marcus's death, age 89. Isaiah's sister called, at age 86. Only family member left, Lieutenant Stone. "I need to know, what did my brother say when he died?" "I'm 86, I don't have much time, please." "Tell me," Marcus decided. Truth after 64 years. He asked a question, "Miss Grant." His last words were a question. "What question?" he said. Was it worth it, Lieutenant? Was it worth it? Silence. Then what did you tell him? I couldn't answer. He died before I could respond. And I've spent 64 years trying to answer that question. Was it worth it? Lieutenant Stone Marcus paused. I don't know if it was worth it, but I know it was necessary. We fought not for the America that existed, but for the America that should exist. Isaiah and Benjamin died so their children, so all our children, might inherit something better. The fact that I had to wait 52 years for this medal proves we're not there yet. But the fact that I received it at all proves we're moving. Slowly, painfully, but moving. July 13th, 2010. Marcus Stone died, age 90. Last living Black Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. Arlington National Cemetery. Full military honors. Young Black Army captain, age 26. Same age Stone was in Italy. Gave the eulogy. Lieutenant Stone made it possible for me to wear this uniform and this rank. He waited 52 years for a medal, but he never waited to do what was right. That is the real legacy. The refusal to accept injustice even when that injustice came from the country he served. 2015, Italian government installed memorial at Castle Agonalfi, bronze plaque, in memory of First Lieutenant Marcus J. Stone and the soldiers of Company C 370th Infantry Regiment. Their courage opened the path to victory. Their sacrifice reminds us that freedom requires eternal vigilance and equal justice. Benjamin Carter's daughter, Rebecca, age 74, attended. She stood at the memorial and said, Lieutenant Stone kept his promise every year for 65 years until the day he died. That's the real story. The promise kept across half a century even when no one was listening. This is why we tell these stories, not to glorify war, but to remember men who fought for America when America wouldn't fight for them, to honor promises kept across decades, to ensure that sacrifice, however delayed in recognition, is never forgotten. If you're a veteran, or if someone in your family served, drop a comment and tell us their story, because every veteran deserves what Marcus Stone finally received. Recognition, respect, remembrance. Hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, because there are thousands of Marcus Stones out there. Men and women who did extraordinary things and never received proper recognition. We're going to tell their stories, everyone we can find. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. And thank you for making sure these stories don't disappear into silence.